Hello everybody, my name's Joe Quick and this is Joe's Quick Review. Jumping straight into it today with I Doesn't Exist, created by Luau Games and promoted as a modern day text adventure. But calling it that may be something of a stretch. It does have some very cool text-based features, but this game is more of an artistic journey. Before we get into it, if you do like text games, I'm currently working on something myself called OPUS Scriba, a choose-your-own-path, rapid-action adventure game. You can follow on Facebook or visit the pre-launch page, as I'll be running my own Kickstarter soon. I Doesn't Exist launched their Kickstarter campaign in July 2022, and with the support of 900 backers received a pledge of 25,000 Swiss francs. For reference, the Swiss franc is almost 1-to-1 with the euro, so it did really well given its original target of 10,000. They actually hit their target in the first 4 days, so I assume they already had a good following, or people really love text-based adventures. Diving into the details, honestly, I don't know where to start with this game. I want to highlight that I've only played this for around an hour, and I've seen mixed reviews regarding its gameplay and narrative. It seems some people take a lot out of it, and others not so much. In the beginning, we're introduced with a bit of text and some basic imagery. This serves as a tutorial teaching you how to pick up a key, open the door and so on. Then we get to the main gameplay. A blank screen with nothing but text. A true text-based adventure game. Moments later we are presented with a beautifully pixelated world which we can explore and interact with. And at this point I thought this game was absolutely amazing. Solved the first few puzzles and the gameplay switches. You no longer instruct the character what to do, but have to negotiate with them. Kind of. For the majority of this portion of the game, you can just push any button to progress the conversation between the character and some kind of AI interacting between the character and yourself. It then progresses to some kind of scrapbook styleboard canvas game, a far cry from the original pixel art and no longer a text-based adventure game, as you can use your mouse to create who knows what exactly. Progress even further into the game and you're exploring a 3D world, and you may as well hand me a controller. This doesn't mean it's a bad game, but if you're going in for a text adventure, you've been missold. In fact, this is an exploration of the mind and mental health, contemplating how much control we think we have versus how much control we actually have, how we visualize things at face value but overlook our subconscious feelings. Everybody will take something different away from this game. As I said at the start, it's an artistic journey. Thought-provoking? Perhaps. But that thought is often, what on earth am I doing now? Taking a look at the graphics, they aren't much to look at in the beginning, but then open up into this really charming 2D pixelated scene. Then a less charming 2D scene, but still loving the artwork. And then a basic 3D setting. Some elements of the 3D environment have more character than others, which feel like they are still in the prototype stage, but this leaves it open to interpretation. Is this the dark recesses of your mind or a blank canvas waiting for a spark of light to bring it to life? Personally, I would have loved to see more of the 2D pixelated world, but as this game too often reminds me, I can't always get what I want. I'm not going to spend long on animation. Obviously there are animations in the game and they are nicely done, but there's not so much here to warrant a longer review. Similarly, there are no cutscenes. You're in this from the start to the finish. So let's talk about the story. I do love a good story. This game doesn't have one. No, that's not entirely true, but it's not your typical go on a quest and achieve your goal kind of story. There are multiple stories taking place within the game. You as the player trying to navigate your way through the game, the pixelated character dealing with their personal demons, fears and inhibitions, a potentially evil AI mushroom whose intentions were unclear to me. It felt more like a soap opera or documentary than a start-to-end journey. Unfortunately, if I don't have a goal, I don't have much drive, and therefore my desire to continue with the game was lacking. The user interface was pleasing to start. The screen was split into two elements, the graphical part at the top and the text at the bottom. You're prompted to type at the start of the game and everything from there is self-explanatory. Until it's not. When you get to the canvas part of the gameplay, it feeds you a lot of rather confusing instructions which you can't actually put into action until it gives you some stickers to play with, and then when you reach the 3D part of the game, it gives you no instruction at all, both in relation to the controls and your objective. That's UI in terms of appearance. In terms of interaction, the UI has a different approach. The game takes advantage of natural language processing, effectively an AI system that better understands the player input. I'm assured, however, that the responses are written by humans sitting at computers, not the computers themselves. This means that the system will try and determine if you are being positive or negative and drive the narrative based on your input. Clever stuff. Although a lot of the time this doesn't matter and any kind of input will suffice to drive the story forward, which is a lot less engaging. I don't want to talk about the controls for this game. They're a mess. They work, but they are all over the place. A text-based game. Okay, we're typing, so we use the keyboard. The canvas section, you spend more time reading about the controls than you do actually using them. And the 3D part, work it out for yourself. Perhaps this is another metaphor for us trying to navigate life's complexities, or perhaps it's bad game design. The game has no social element to it. It focuses on themes of mental health and isolation, so no, you can't play it with a friend. The character in game, however, does like to talk, so you can converse with them to your heart's content. Replayability is a bit of an odd one here, as is most of the game if I'm being completely honest. On the first run through, the game actually quits out of the application, so you have no choice but to replay it if you want to progress further in the game. Except you don't progress in the traditional sense. You restart the game with a deeper understanding and stronger relationships with the characters. The pixel person and the AI mushroom will interact with you in different ways. So you can replay the game, but it is also something of a requirement if you want the full experience. The puzzles remain the same, so it draws a thin line between being interesting and repetitive. The game does have multiple endings, so there is that to consider, but I did not have the patience to play this more than once. The soundtrack. Again, not your traditional design. Evolving from the classic sounds of a hard-working processor and click-clack of a keyboard to a very alive environment, leaves rustling in the wind, a rusty bucket swinging in the tree, and the constant beating of a heart. Your heart, the character's heart, just a big old heart in a cave, you decide. But all the sounds make you very aware and feel present in the game. The developer recommends headphones, and I can understand why. Musical tracks appear in the game as we switch gameplay styles, but the music breaks apart as we return to the supposed reality. It's all very well pieced together to highlight the game's different components. The game doesn't have any configuration options, so it's not deliberately accessible. But there aren't a lot of controls. You can take everything at your own pace, and for most of the game, there is a high contrast between the text, background, character, and environment. So I'd like to believe most people can pick this up and play it if they want to. I applaud the developers for their creativity, raising awareness for mental health and the somewhat intuitive input design. I'm disappointed that it pushes so much conversation your way and encourages creative feedback but doesn't reward you for it, asking you lots of questions but a lot of the time with a guaranteed response. If you could click through the game, you probably would, but then you'd miss some of the finer elements which make it good. Little comments that are added here and there which add context to the overall design. It's a hard one to balance, but if you're going to play the same thing over and over again, I think you definitely need some level development as opposed to just additional narrative text. It's like watching the director's cut of a film. Essentially you're watching the same thing, but you've got an extra 5 minutes which may or may not add to the overall experience. Again, I only played it for an hour, so maybe it does change in some way. Another consideration in the text-based element of the game is the inclusion of animated graphics. Your focus was often directed at the text, and therefore you missed the animated result of your input. A slight delay between your input, the animation, and the response may have improved on that, or should they not have included animation? I'm not going to talk about the canvas section, that's completely out there and basically just a desktop application. And the 3D aspect is also quite basic, reminding you of older games with limited graphic capacity. This may have been a design choice. The overall darkness certainly has a representation of being lost and alone, but it just feels like the designers had given up slightly at this stage and wanted to reach the end of the story. Speaking of the end, one thing I cannot get my head around is why you would have text, intending to be read, placed behind this mushroom. You can keep looking back and forth to capture the conversation between the characters and the mushroom AI. You could step further back, in which case you wouldn't be able to read what the mushroom was saying, or you can just try and fill in the blanks. I want mushroom to talk, mushroom hem, I want mushroom to decide. It's not fun, it's not thought-provoking, it's just a pain in the mushroom. My final verdict. The game was originally created as part of a bachelor degree, and I'm inclined to say that's the part that made me go, wow, cool game. Everything after that made me question what was happening and why I was bothering to play. But if you're looking for something different, or perhaps inspirational, then I Doesn't Exist could be worth checking out. Available on both Steam and itch.io, maybe give it a try, or if you've already played it, let me know your thoughts. That's it for me. Until next time, keep gaming, developing, or whatever it is that keeps you sane in this crazy world.